Shaka Zulu was never defeated in battle. At a time when much of southern Africa was divided into smaller rival groups, he forged something entirely different, a disciplined and formidable military power that would reshape the region. To his warriors, he was a visionary. To his enemies, he was a storm gathering on the horizon. And yet, in 1828, the man who survived countless conflicts would meet his end not on a battlefield, but through betrayal, not by strangers, but by his own blood. Before Shaka's rise, warfare between neighboring communities was often brief and limited. Battles were fought, casualties were relatively low, and survivors returned home. Shaka changed that. He transformed how wars were fought. Training became relentless. Warriors were pushed beyond exhaustion, taught to move as one body, one shield, one unstoppable force. Traditional throwing spears were replaced with shorter stabbing weapons designed for close combat, forcing confrontation instead of distance. Discipline was absolute. Retreat was unthinkable. And through innovative battlefield formations, including the famous Horns of the Bull, designed to encircle opponents, Shaka's armies didn't simply defeat enemies, they overwhelmed them. Under his leadership, the Zulu kingdom expanded with astonishing speed. Communities either joined him or were swept aside by the momentum of his campaigns. Across the landscape, his name became synonymous with power. Some saw him as a unifier, others saw him as a conqueror, but none could ignore him. Then came the turning point, when Shaka's mother Nandi died. Historical accounts suggest that something within the king shifted. Grief took hold, and the kingdom felt its weight. Periods of mourning were enforced with severe intensity. Some reports describe harsh punishments for those perceived as insufficiently sorrowful. Fields went untilled. Daily rhythms were disrupted. Whether every story has been amplified by time is difficult to know. But what is clear is that fear began to spread alongside loyalty. A kingdom that had once surged forward with confidence now moved more cautiously in the shadow of its ruler. Among those watching closely were Shaka's half-brothers, Dingain and Mlangana. They had witnessed his brilliance, they had witnessed his power, and now they were witnessing instability. History often reminds us that the greatest threats to rulers do not always gather beyond the borders. Sometimes they grow within the royal household itself. Concern deepened into calculation. Calculation hardened into decision. If the kingdom was to survive, they believed something had to be done. One day in September of 1828, near the royal settlement, the moment arrived. There was no clashing of armies, no warning drums, no defensive lines drawn in the dust. Instead, the approach was quiet, deceptively ordinary. Then, without ceremony, the attack began. Spears were driven into the king. The architect of Zulu military dominance collapsed. A leader who had reshaped the balance of power across a vast region fell not to a foreign force, but to those who knew him best. It is said that as Shaka lay dying, he spoke words that would echo far beyond that moment, warning that powerful foreigners would one day come to rule the land. Whether prophecy, interpretation, or later legend, the statement has lingered in historical memory. With Shaka gone, Dingain assumed control of the kingdom, but leadership transitions born from blood rarely bring immediate peace. The legacy Shaka left behind could not be erased with a single act of violence. He had transformed military strategy, redefined leadership through strength and innovation, and altered the trajectory of an entire region's history. To some, he remains a symbol of resilience and statecraft. To others, a reminder of how power can both build and unsettle. What cannot be disputed is this: Shaka Zulu was never conquered in battle. His armies did not collapse before an enemy charge. His strategies were not undone on open ground. Instead, his story became one of history's oldest patterns: the rise of a formidable ruler, the weight of absolute authority, and the quiet, irreversible danger of betrayal from within. Nearly 2 centuries later, his name still carries across the hills of KwaZulu-Natal, not merely as a warrior, but as a figure who reshaped the meaning of power itself.